WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us today. We Should Know is on the air Tuesday, each and every Tuesday at 2:30. We come to you on Star Communications, Channel 16, WCLN Radio, Summation and Sampson Weekly Newspaper. Today we're talking about music and all things music. That particular art form brings to mind one person in this county that has had as much exposure and serves on the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame, Robert Honeycutt. Robert, thank you for coming in and talking to us today. I want to start the show with a proclamation. A lot of folks may not realize this, but November of last year, Governor Cooper signed a proclamation basically saying 2019 is going to be the year of music in North Carolina, which was supported. It's kind of a collateral kind of thing with the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame. When I looked at the list of names that he attributed under the whereases in that proclamation, there was some names on there, some we're familiar with, like James Taylor. We had various people on the national level that's listed that he indicated were North Carolina people. And as I read through that list of names, I won't do that on air because it'd just take up so much time, but when I read through that list of names, I was pretty, it was pretty awakening to discover we had that many people in North Carolina that had made national history in the world of music.
Well, North Carolina probably has more different varieties of music, musicians, singers, than any state in the United States. We don't just have country music or beach music. We have everything from bluegrass to opera.
When you started your career way back during the day, my
younger days.
In your younger days, we'll talk about the 60s, and a lot of people will remember you from your connection with a little place off the road, I should say, called Williams Lake, in which you managed and operated that. You were kind of instrumental during that period of time in history in bringing a lot of African-American bands in. There was a lot of folks that were basically breaking into the national scene that you had exposure to before they hit that big highway to the national stage.
Well, I brought in people like Jackie Wilson. He was super big.
National recognition.
The Platters, when they were the Platters, the Drithers, the Coasters, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. Of course, all of our local groups like the Embers, Gene Barber and the Cavaliers, the Tassels, who later became the Pieces of Eight. They hit the national scene. Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of national entertainment came through Williams Lake.
There's something that I wanted to kind of get you to talk about a bit as well. During that period of time, a lot of folks may not know, but you have some musical background yourself in playing an instrument. But what really kind of gravitated you to saying, look, this is something I want to do. This is something I'm going to put my time into it, because we're talking about oftentimes, 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're out there trying to make sure everybody's, cleared out, and there's all kinds of stuff in the background that folks don't realize. But huge crowds of people would gather around that pond over there and in that lake house, and the crowds were tremendous. Even
you were there.
even to the point, exactly, even to the point that sometimes, you had to, as the old saying goes, wiggle your way in and out. What inside of you said, this is something I want to do? Because it was a pretty huge undertaking.
Well, really, it all happened accidentally. I started trying to play the saxophone in high school. I was lucky enough to get in a few bands. And when Mr. Williams retired, of course, I had worked with him in high school and some when I was in college at Campbell. He approached me about my band playing. And anyway, I ended up leasing the building for almost 5 years.
Because now before you did that, it was a kind of a little local resort area there with the...
Well, there was a jukebox. We call it a jukebox joint. Mm-hmm. It actually started playing music in 1936. And the first jukebox ran on a generator. And Mr. Williams would open Easter week, Wednesday, Easter week, run to Labor Day. And when I took it over and brought in the bands, we decided to keep it open year-round. So we pretty much enclosed the building with plywood panels. If you remember, they was open.
Yep.
The front and back of the building was open. So we just cut plywood panels and put in those openings. Summertime, we'd take them out. So, of course, we had no air conditioning, very little heat.
That's right. Well, it was a period of time that folks that maybe were not there or didn't go through that period of time maybe find it a little bit hard to understand, because there was no such thing at that time of Facebook, cell phones, nothing of that nature. The word got put out through basically one person speaking to somebody else, or a poster in a country store, and all of a sudden you discovered that when you're getting there, when you're arriving at Williams Lake, there's like a curve that comes around there. The lake's on your left, you're coming around that curve. You literally, back there in that day, as you mentioned, there's no air conditioning. Not only that, there was none in the car, so you had the window down. But you could hear that band up to half a mile or a mile away. And so you would turn off whatever, what kind of music you had in the car, and you come around. And people were lined up on the road to get off the road to find a place to park. And that was kind of routine, was it not?
Pretty much routine. Of course, not every night, but it was pretty much routine.
At least once a week, anyway.
Depending on what band I had or national act.
How did you find some of these bands that you just mentioned? Were they marketing? Did they have people that represented them? Did they just put the word out? Did you have to seek them out? How did you find
some of them I knew, like the Embers, Buddy Skipper from Wilmington. I went, and Bob Collins and the Fabulous Five, I'd met them. In fact, Bob Collins opened up, I believe it was April 21st on a Wednesday night in 1965. No advertisement, all word of mouth. And we had cars from one curve to all the way around to the next curve, and people standing in line to get in on a Wednesday night. But I started advertising on WKIX in Raleigh, some on the local station here. But most of those, the national acts came through booking agents, and probably half the bands did. And they were out of Greensboro and Charlotte.
It was an undertaking when you stepped into it, and there was a certain risk involved, because you had a certain amount that you had up front to get these bands. And folks a lot of times look at it and go, well, all they had to do was just pick up the phone or call somebody and they showed up and that was it. But this is a huge business undertaking, is it not?
Well, booking a band or doing a concert isn't like selling merchandise. If you don't sell your merchandise today, you got it tomorrow to sell. You do a concert or an event with music, you got your money invested. You either make your money that day or night, or you pay out of your pocket. So it's a risky business. So
some of the folks that you connected with that you just called the names a while ago that went national, were you able to stay connected with them over the years as they hit, should I say, the big stage? Was there still a connection? Could you pick the phone up and talk to them? Did you see them somewhere and they still remembered, quote, the Williams Lake era?
Well, some of them did, like Eddie Floyd. We still talk occasionally. Eddie Cornelius and Sister Rose, I see him occasionally. Of course, the Embers, General Johnson, before he passed away, I was using him at Williams Lake with a group called the Showman, and you probably remember seeing him. And of course, he later went on, formed a group called the Chairman of the Board. And Ken Knox, who was a sax player and backup singer, is now the leader of the new Chairman of the Board.
These people had a certain sense of relationship, as I remember during those days. It was like they had a rapport with the audience, should I say. And it was interesting as I reflect back, and many people that's listening to this show today maybe will also be members where they had attended Williams Lake and the events there. But for me, when I reflect back, there was just an automatic connection. There was a spark there. And I mean, you were in a trance almost the time you got in, and you were there for 2-3 hours.
Well, you know, you had to walk through the crowd to get to the bandstand. Mm-hmm. And probably the TAMs interacted with the audience more than any other group. And they were a national act.
The interesting thing with the TAMs, I want to touch on this before I forget it too, is there was a part of the show that was done at that time. And I want you to clarify this for me. And I've mentioned it to folks, and I've had other people tell me they remember this. There was one of the band members, and I almost believe he had a saxophone, if I'm recollecting well, would actually elevate himself to the rafters and hang upside down with that saxophone.
No, it wasn't one.
Was it all of them?
It was the entire band.
That's what I wanted you to say that, because I didn't want to put it out.
The guitar player had good sense.
Yeah.
He later became a psychologist.
Okay.
And he's still playing music. That was the Tassels.
Yeah.
And later the Pieces of Eight, the same group with two of the swinging medallions.
But that was a heck of a show, Robert. You just didn't. But I can't explain being there and seeing that, and all of a sudden this is going on. You're going, what's just happened?
Well, the thing is, they actually played upside down. I don't know how they did it.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
Drummer, keyboard player, Ken Helfer playing trumpet and singing.
I want you to speak to that, because I've had people say, I'm not sure I remembered that right. But
well, when we built on, extended the building, there was lattice on the old part, you know, in the ceiling. And when we extended the new part, it just left those rafters open. And Ken Helfer had seen Ulysses Hardy with the Mighty Blue Notes do that in Facing. And he started doing it. The whole band started doing it.
We're going to take a quick break and come back and pick it up from there. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Robert Honeycutt. We're talking about all things music. We're talking about the governor's proclamation that 2019 is going to be the year of music in North Carolina. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. We Should Know is on there. You can reach us again. Just a reminder, weshouldknow.edu@gmail.com. That's weshouldknow.edu@gmail.com. Or you can continue to send cards or recommendations or notes, letters to Post Office Box 1482. That's Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. And we'll be glad to respond to that, take your recommendations. Oftentimes you'll see people on the show that you have recommended. Today we're talking about all things music, and we're talking about proclamation Governor of North Carolina has put into place in November of 2018. 2019 is the year of music. The music man in this area, Robert Honeycutt. Robert, you've got so many years. As we went off first segment, we were talking about a band that literally hung upside down in the rafters at Williams Lake. You say that today and people go, that can't be true.
That's the truth.
It's amazing, though, not only at the talent, but I'm going to put it in this phrase. It's like raw talent. You saw them before they were just kind of going from one little club to the other, and all of a sudden you saw them there, and then it went to the national level. Well,
I saw some of them develop, like the Cavaliers. Gene Barber was my roommate at Campbell, and I discovered him. Gerald Davis, the bass player with Embers for almost 40 years, I gave him his first job in the band in 1964. It was Gene Barber and Gerald Davis and myself and 3 other guys. And I left that band and took over Williams Lake and got Gene the job with the Cavaliers. And I saw the Cavaliers go from a mediocre band to backing up Four Tops and people like that, TAMs. They were pretty much on the national scene at one time.
And some of these people, we remember the national stage being with somebody called Ed Sullivan and folks like that. They would reach that level. It might not have been on his show, but they would reach that level of entertainment.
Jackie Wilson, the Platters, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Mary Wells, all these people was on the Ed Sullivan Show. American Bandstand, and later Soul Train, a lot of them. But they all played in the woods at Williams Lake.
And for folks out there that's listening to us today, talk about these bands and Ed Sullivan, folks that maybe has never seen that, don't even know what we're talking about. You missed a very rich part of history, but it built a foundation in which now when we look at where we are, we have discovered that that tradition of music and talent is a rich part of North Carolina's history.
Well, that music, you know, the 60s music is probably the best music ever. That music will never die. You still have the stations that plays oldies. Mm-hmm. There'll be, sometimes I can listen to like 99.9 in Wilmington.
A lot of stations. Nothing
3 or
but
4 of those in a row played for me at Williams Lake, or performed for me at Williams Lake.
Did they bridge a social transition in the country in the 60s? Was that the part of the bridge that moved us to a new awakening with the way we get along with each other?
Music played a big part in it. The teenagers that went to Williams Lake, they didn't care. They wanted to hear the music. They didn't care what color you were. And the Tams was the biggest act ever as far as drawing. They would draw more people than anybody ever used. And they got along great with the crowd, never had one incident. And one thing, I never turned anybody away from the door because of the color. Never did.
And that was during a period of time when there was a huge amount of friction going on.
Well, you could drive up Interstate 95 and see a KKK sign.
Yeah.
Advertising the KKK in Johnson County. I got a picture of that. But we never had no problem with it.
It's kind of a sad trilogy when we look at that period of time in multiple ways. But music has always been there to kind of mellow the landscape, and it brought people together. Is that what we see, and is that one of the things that attracted you to kind of, and I'll say, devote your life, because you have, and I'm sure you realize that, to music, is that it does seem to bring people together. And even today, I've had people to tell me, I don't know who played it, but there was a certain song played on a radio station or something. I heard a song and it brought back memories. I mean, it was like something was 30, 40 years ago, and now it's in front of them again. Well,
you've heard the song I'm a Girl Watcher. Mm-hmm. Guys were playing at Williams Lake.
That kind of
became a hit.
That grew out of Williams Lake.
The Occasions, they were first called Occasions Combo. Then they, just before they hit the national scene with I'm a Girl Watcher, they changed the name to The Occasions. And they won American Bandstand a couple of times, and I believe the Johnny Carson Show.
Now we've got some local talent that you know, particularly in the Salemburg area, that went national. A guitarist, and I'm going to let you talk about him for a minute, because there's a couple of things you were telling me earlier, and over the years I remember some things you told me about this particular musician, and a lot of folks don't realize it, but this, at the time he was a kid, this kid was right there in the Salemburg area.
Willie Weeks, he's a black gentleman. He graduated from Charles E. Perry in Roseboro in 1964. And he had a rough life. Of course, a lot of us did, you know. Mm-hmm. We didn't know we were poor, but we probably were.
Because everybody else
just
was.
Just didn't know it.
Yeah, everybody else was, so we didn't know
he grew up pretty poor. And I heard him tell this. He's in the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And some of the people he played with, he got famous doing a bass solo on a live R&B album with Donny Hathaway. He was recording with all these people like the Rolling Stones. He was on 12 different albums with George Harrison of the Beatles. He toured about 8 years with Warner Judd, and he got a phone call one day. He said he was driving down the road in his car, Eric Clapton. Said, Willie, is there any way you can come on a tour with me?
International star.
International. He said, I think I can. He stayed with Eric Clapton up till about 2 years ago. But Willie grew up right there at Salem Pizza in Salemburg, or outside the city limits. And our county commissioner, Harry Parker, they grew up together. And Harry knew a few chords on a guitar, and Harry is actually the first person that ever taught or showed Willie Weeks chords on the guitar. And Willie later changed to the bass. But this guy, after touring with Eric Clapton, he'd been in Nashville before, and he's back in Nashville doing recording sessions. But he said as a black kid growing up, of course, back in the 50s, you were limited to what you could hear on the radio. Mm-hmm. And he said, I listened to the Grand Ole Opry a lot. He said, and I would occasionally think, I'm a black kid listening to country music. Why? Mm-hmm. But then he went out to Nashville, started recording with all these famous singers, and he said it all came back. Mm-hmm. It was already in my head. I didn't have to learn it. Mm-hmm. It was already there.
It just fell into place.
He said, I can record with a jazz group, country group, it doesn't matter. Play it all. Rock and roll.
Do you think, Robert, as we're talking today, that there may be people that are listening to your conversation and what you were just talking about with Willie Weeks that have unbelievable talent that's right here in our listening area in Sampson, Bladen, Duplin, parts of Cumberland and so forth that have this unbelievable talent, but they never get the opportunity to break out of the box. It's there. And that kind of troubles me in the sense, what can we do to open the door for people to express that talent that maybe don't have an outlet?
There's a lot of people that could probably sing, play an instrument, but they don't even know it. And there's a lot of them that can pick up an instrument, play anything they pick up. But they just don't have that desire to go on the road, to take the time to do it. They're tied up with family, which they're going to put the family first. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them just don't care for that lifestyle.
Is it just the fact that folks don't want to break out of their comfort zone to attempt to do something else? They're comfortable where they are. As you just mentioned, family, they're familiar with the area, and they see a lot of things out there, and it's a little bit scary in today's world.
It's got to be scary. And
it was back then. It was back in the 60s, it was scary.
You could take say an 18-year-old from Sampson County, go out to Nashville, he's got 10,000 people out there as good or better than he is.
Yeah, the competition is tremendous.
Now, there is one kid here, he's not a kid anymore, Nick Autry from Clement School. He, I guess he's in his mid-30s. He went out to Nashville right after high school, tried to make it as a singer, didn't make it, came back, went to State College. I think he got married in the meantime because I went to his wedding. He went back to Nashville, he and his wife, came back again, and the third time he went back, he grew up in the construction business, mm-hmm. and he took a job as a foreman on a construction job, joined the YMCA. He told me, just so he could leave a construction job, go take a bath, and go to Black River Studio, one of the biggest ones in Nashville, mm-hmm. sweep floors, do anything he had to. Well, he got his foot in the door, and now he's a general manager of that studio. And he was an engineer on a Grammy-winning CD by Buddy Guy. He's recorded Ronnie Millsap. Ronnie thinks the world of him. And he just had it in his head he was going to make it somewhere or another. And most people don't have that. It's like anything else. You want to really get good at something, most people will not take the time to do it.
Sheer determination.
It's determination. It's all in your head, a lot of it.
We've kind of opened a can of worms, if you will, here as it relates to this area and the talent in this area. We're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk a bit about how you ended up as board member with the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame, how this connects with the governor's proclamation, and talk about some of the inductees. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned. We're talking with Robert Honeycutt. We're talking about music and how it impacts your life.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. We're coming up now with I think our third break shortly here, and we're talking with Robert Honeycutt. We're talking about music today. We're talking about an interesting piece of this. Robert, you were just talking about how sometimes, music identifies us and all those kinds of things. We were talking about some of the people that grew up right here in the Sampson County area, to include other connecting counties. You have found yourself now in a very interesting place, which is right in the middle of North Carolina's music and talent, and that's North Carolina Music Hall of Fame up at Kannapolis. For folks who don't know where that is, if you know where Charlotte is, you know where Kannapolis is. It's right there. Yeah, in Concord, it's there. And you have been instrumental in a lot of things that goes on with the Music Hall of Fame, particularly as it relates to not only what the governor's proclamation is for 2019, North Carolina being one of the music leaders in the country, but you've brought a lot of attention to the Music Hall of Fame. Tell us about how you got involved with that group of folks and some of the things that may be going on that we're not aware of there.
Well, let me give you a little bit of history. The concept came about in 1996. In 1999, the group that formed the organization that had the charter from the state, they inducted about 8 people or groups. One of them was a chairman of the board. A couple of years later, 3 years later, they inducted Ronnie Millsap, and it went pretty much dormant until 2009. Mm-hmm. A guy named Mike Curve Records, he discovered Debbie Boone. When he was about 23 years old, he recorded Candyman with Sammy Davis Jr., a song Sammy hated. He did it in 2 takes. Well, 5 million copies later, Sammy loved it. But anyway, he came. Like I said, he worked with a lot of artists, formed his own company, and he discovered Leanne Rimes, Tim McGraw. He and Clive Davis are probably the 2 biggest men ever in music. And he's also big in NASCAR racing. Dale Earnhardt started driving pretty much for Mike Curve Records. Mike owned the car. Richard Petty won his last 2 races driving Mike Curve Records car. And Mike had accumulated all these cars over the years. Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, he owned those cars. And he donated the number 200 win to the Smithsonian. And he had the number 199 of Richards in Kannapolis. So he started his own motor museum. And so in 2006, he got, of course, he being in music, he got interested in doing a North Carolina Music Hall of Fame, and he found out there was already an organization. So he got permission pretty much to take it over and fund it. So he remodeled an old jailhouse right downtown Kannapolis, and that's where the museum was until about 5 years ago. They had the first induction ceremony in 2009. That was a sit-down dinner, probably 200 people. And I got involved in 2011. I got a phone call one day from Billy Scott. He was on the board. I didn't even know there was a North Carolina Music Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And a few minutes later, I got another call from Eddie Ray, mm-hmm. who is the operator of the museum. And they were trying to get up with Maceo Parker, sax player. Mm-hmm. He played at Faison, and I met him when he was a 16-year-old kid. And he went on to play with James Brown. He recorded with James Taylor. He toured for years with Prince, recorded with Prince. But anyway, I got involved then, and then about 5 years ago, I was put on the board. But the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame, we honor all phases of music. I tell everybody from bluegrass to opera and everything in between.
And that's a big area.
We got people like in jazz, blues, Roberta Flack, country music, Charlie Daniels, Randy Travis, Ronnie Millsap, also Clyde McFadder. He and Bill Pinkney was the two original drifters. And the first song they ever recorded that made a hit was Money Honey. And later, this great song that's so big, never gets old, Clyde McFadder singing in that high voice, White Christmas. Mm-hmm. But right now, Clyde's daughter, Debbie McFadder, is our chairman, or chairperson, and has been. This is going on her second year. And but anyway, we got all these people in there from North Carolina. Willie Weeks is in there from Sampson County and Salemburg. Jay Spell from Spivey's Corner. Jay was in blind school in Raleigh with Ronnie Millsap. And he went on, he played and recorded with Jimmy Buffett, Can Heat, Tower of Power. Jay was another guy. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter if it's country, bluegrass, or jazz. The guy could play it. I've
got to ask it now, and I've heard you talk about Jay Spell before. Is this idea of music, is it something that is just part of that person's DNA? Some of these things, it's like it's not like you can go to school and learn. You can pick up stuff, but it's almost like God's kind of blessed them with this gift.
That's correct. Playing an instrument is a little bit like typing. Most anybody can learn to type. But to get good at an instrument, you got to be born with it.
And Jay Spell would be an example of that.
He was born with it. Ronnie Millsap was. There's a thing called perfect pitch. They can listen to a piano player and they tell you every note the guy plays, and you can't learn it.
And choir members out there at churches can probably tell us about perfect pitch too, because they probably know choir members that can't sing. they might be thinking, I know what's not perfect pitch.
You won't find many people that has. Even a lot of great musicians do not have perfect pitch.
That's kind of the diamond of it.
It's a diamond of it. And I know a lady in Wilmington now, she was born with perfect pitch. She went on all these schools, but she had no desire to make it a profession.
As a person involved in music, when you see somebody like that has unbelievable talent, and as you just said, they just don't have a desire to use it, does that bother you anyway?
Well, I can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Music, acting.
Not an easy business.
That's probably the toughest business there is to break into. You can be the best in the world and never get discovered. That's the problem. You be the best baseball player in North Carolina, you probably sign a big contract with the Yankees or somebody.
Has music been a big industry for Eastern North Carolina and North Carolina as a whole when you look at the amount of money that is generated? Is that something that we're missing as we run around and look at economic development? Do we miss the entertainment piece and a lot of the dollars that's generated as a result of that?
There's a lot of recording in North Carolina people don't realize. You think about recording, you think about Nashville or L.A. or New York. There's a lot of small studios. There's several in Raleigh, Chapel Hill. In fact, Hootie and the Blowfish. Mm-hmm. Of course, everybody says, well, they're from Charleston and Columbia. They are. But they got their recording career started in Raleigh. That's a fact.
Wow.
And a lot of there's a lot of national groups that got started in places like Raleigh. So the recording industry is a big part of North Carolina. And in beach music, Keith Houston, you know Keith, mm-hmm. the Band of Oz, mm-hmm. he has his own studio in Dunn, and he records probably 9 out of 10 of all these beach bands. And he can press the records there, CDs there,
And that's in Dunn, North Carolina?
In Dunn. He can do the whole 9 yards of it. And there's a lot of places like that in North Carolina.
And folks don't see that, though. When they see it, they see the results, somebody on stage, or they hit a certain button on their phone or they whatever, and all of a sudden they, you know, the way the world is now, they got music in their hand. They don't see the background and the financial depth.
Yeah, that's true. And another thing, too, you can actually, with all this electronic stuff now, you can start a studio in your own home. I know several musicians that are like sax players. Somebody will send them, actually email it to them. Mm-hmm. They got the studio there, they'll put the sax track on top of that, right there at the home, send it back.
Wow, and everything's
before you had
done.
to go to a studio, reserve time, and a lot of this now you don't have to do it.
It's changed the kind of the face of music in the sense of how quick and the number of people that you see, whether it's YouTube or whether it's podcast or whatever, that just has tremendous talent, and all of a sudden it kind of bubbles to the top.
Well, it's too, is getting to the place that the record labels aren't as important as they used to be. You put it online, download it for 75 cents or $1, and you don't even have to go through a record company anymore. And of course, the record companies, they do the same thing. Mm-hmm. You download a whole CD or one song off that CD. So,
cuts cost and also makes availability of the stage for the person that thinks they've got to go somewhere. Their stage might be their own home with their phone.
Yeah, that's true. So,
simplicity.
That's what it's getting to be.
We're going to take.
Now, there's a lot of the old timers at Ronnie Millsap. Mm-hmm. He goes back to Black River Studios. Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys, they like that studio. They want to be there.
It's a certain amount of human interaction. We're going to take another break.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Robert Honeycutt. When we come back, we're going to talk about some inductees to the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame and a special event coming up in Wilmington, North Carolina that Robert, of course, Imagine This is behind this event. We'll be back in one moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. It's called Come Here, North Carolina. During 2019, Come Here, North Carolina will celebrate the composers, musicians, venues, studios, record stores, executives who help create and support and sustain music from North Carolina. We're talking with Robert Honeycutt, somebody that knows quite a bit about music. Robert, you spent just about an entire 5 or 6 or 7 decades somehow involved in music, whether it's an instrument in your hand or being the backbone of getting somebody to a stage.
Well, that's true, but I got in and got out. I would get in and get out.
But truly, you might have stepped out, but your head was still there.
Well,
would that be safe to say?
I tell everybody, if you really get involved in music, it's like a drug.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
You're hooked.
And it does. It probably does have some endorphin effect in the brain. The governors recognize this. You're a board member with North Carolina Music Hall of Fame. You did something last year to 2018 inductees. We don't have time to go over all of the inductees. I'd like to just kind of touch on a few of those inductees and maybe get you to make a comment about them. You mentioned a while ago that the inductees, the range is from bluegrass to church music to rock and roll. It's people that plays opera, all genres of music. So when I look at those, and you have a list here that you have with the brochure, but one of them comes to mind to start with is Chris Daughtry, who was on one of the national TV talent shows. Many people may remember him several years ago.
He was in the top 10 of American Idol. Mm-hmm. Now, he didn't come and perform. He was already booked. He couldn't make it. But two of the artists that did come, one was a gospel group, the Hoppers,
Mm-hmm.
They've been around like 55, 6 years. And believe it or not, a gospel group brought the house down. I mean, we had people there who loved bluegrass, R&B, another one liked something else, country. But everybody in that 800 people in that theater, midway through their show, stood and applauded. That's what kind of an impact these guys made.
And the Harpers have not only done that at huge events like that, but even small town events in their career.
Yeah. They have a thing in April, Myrtle Beach, on Monday and Tuesday. And at the convention center, they packed that place. In fact, I was there last year. They allowed me to go up on stage midway through their show and talk about the Hall of Fame and them being inducted.
Well, you've taken on this genre now, from being the promoter of events and bands back in the 60s to being now one of the key leaders with the Hall of Fame, because you're out everywhere. I mean, I don't know anybody that travels as much as Robert Honeycutt. People that's listening to this show is probably out there going, yeah, tell him about it. But you're literally everywhere, and it just comes natural for you to promote the Hall of Fame and what they're doing. And people like, one of the names I saw on last year's inductee list that folks probably remember from TV, not necessarily music, John Tesh. Yeah.
He came and performed. The guy is absolutely great. And Bill Leslie, they were roommates in college and remained friends all these years. Bill came and introduced him, and we had to rent Steinway Baby Grand for him. $1,100 for one night, and he put on about a 45-minute show.
He's just a class act.
And the guy was just unbelievable. If you ever get a chance to see him, go see him. It'll be even nobody but him, just playing the piano.
Well, many people have seen him on TV, John Tesh, and know that name.
He was on Entertainment Tonight, too.
Then you had folks like Luther Barnes. Gospel. You know, and as I look at these, Calvin Richardson, Blind Boy Fuller.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's kind of rhythm and blues.
And blues.
Yeah, blues.
He was some of the pioneers of guitar playing and the blues.
How do you come about actually identifying these folks? Is there a process with the board that names are brought, that folks are inducted into the Hall of Fame in North Carolina? Do they have to have certain credentials?
You have to be born in North Carolina or either spent substantial amount of time in North Carolina, mainly 10 years or more. And there's a list, I think, of more than 200 people that's on that list. And every year we go through and see if they qualify. And then it goes before a committee. They select, narrow it down to about 7 or 8 people or groups. And then this year the board of directors, we had the final say. We'll look it over and approve it. Where in the past we hadn't been able to do that.
And when I look back from '99 to now, there's a lot of names on there. But yet it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the number of people that have huge talent in this state just keep coming. They just keep coming. So, do you expect this to go on for another decade with people being inducted? We have enough
talent to keep it going on and on. It's like we got people like Scotty McCrary. He definitely will be in there in 4 or 5 years. Eric Church, he's fairly new. He's been around 15 years or more. He's in. This talent just keeps coming. And there's a lot of people in the past, too, that's not in there.
Can people nominate folks that they know?
You can submit a name.
Like you could go online to the website and submit a name if you want.
I'm hoping sometime in the future we'll have it so it'll be like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so that people maybe join the museum as a member or whatever, and we'll be able to vote. Now I don't know if that'll happen or not. I'd like to see it, where the public could have a voice in who's inducted.
We talked a bit a while ago, and this question leans back to that a bit, but for folks that know someone or has a family member or know someone that they've seen. With the way media is now, Facebook and other media, you can put people online and all of a sudden they may get 500,000 hits or whatever. But if they want somebody to kind of take a look at this kid or take a look at this guy or this gal or whomever it may be that's just doing an unbelievable job with singing a certain kind of song or doing something with a piano or some instrument, is there a way the Music Hall of Fame could take a look at that and say, you know, we can make recommendation? I mean, sometimes folks just don't know what to do. They know this person's unbelievably talented.
You can submit a name. There's 3 or 4 different people I've submitted that people didn't realize who they were. I had to educate them. Link Ray from Dunn. Link Ray was back in the 50s and he passed away a few years ago. He probably influenced as many guitar players as Chet Atkins or Les Paul, any of these people did. Most people don't know who he is, but he grew up in Dunn. Moved to up around Virginia Beach when he was 12 years old. But Willie Weeks, a lot of people didn't know who Willie Weeks was, or Jay Spell. But you can submit a name. They probably will be on the list anyway. Okay.
Well, I want to try to get to something before we're coming pretty quick to a close here, but I want to get to this. An event coming up, the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame presents Beach Music. I'm going to hold this sign up and let you tell us about it. This is a poster. Hopefully we'll be able to pick that up on camera. This is coming up in Wilmington. Tell us about what's going on. I'm promoting it for the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame as a fundraiser. 100% of the proceeds will go to the Hall of Fame. And it's on Sunday, March 24th. We got the Embers, the Band of Oz, and Chairman of the Board all on the same show. I don't think that's ever happened before. And also we got the Imitations. They'll do about a 30-minute show before. And we're also going to honor and the fans, Buddy Skipper. Buddy Skipper played the first 6 Saturday nights at Williams Lake in 1965. And he's like a legend around eastern North Carolina. And he started back in the mid-50s, back before the Embers. So. And Greenfield Lake, for those people that have never been there or don't know where it's at, it's a beautiful amphitheater. The location is outstanding. This time of the year, probably you'll see some azaleas blooming a little bit. Oh, yeah. It's a beautiful place. The number, I'm going to give out these numbers, and your number is kind of, I almost got it in my mind, 214-2858, and that's 910, 214-2858. The Hall of Fame, North Carolina Music Hall of Fame, is 704-934-2320. And either one of those numbers they can call, get tickets and that kind of thing.
You can go online at www. Greenfield Lake Amphitheater, and you can buy them from Ticketfly.
Okay.
But you save those charges if you buy them from me.
Okay.
But Greenfield Lake, you know, is right on Highway 421 going through Wilmington.
Right down your left.
A lot of people don't realize that beautiful lake.
Yeah.
And it winds around about a mile, and it's only the theater's only like 3 blocks from 421.
So it's a great area, and on that particular date and time, typically the weather is just kind of idyllic.
We can seat 900 people in regular outdoor chairs in concrete.
And this will be in the afternoon. Finish up 5:30, 6 o'clock?
We'll open the doors at 12, start music sometime before 1, and we finish up before 6.
Okay, folks, you got it done. Don't forget GreenfieldLakeAmphitheater.com and get your tickets. I'll thank Robert Honeycutt for being with us today. Time goes real fast when we're doing these shows. Robert's a busy man, and I guess I would say self-imposed. He enjoys what he's doing. It always shows. As you go about the countryside, if folks need to get up with him, again, his number is 214-2858. Next week, we'll be back at the same time, 2:30, each and every Tuesday. We have a number of shows lined up, and we are always looking, again, for your input on what we're doing to make the effort somewhat better for us, because we're delivering information you want to know more about. And as we go to close today, we want to thank everybody for continuing to listen to us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on the radio. And may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.